Hi everybody, good morning. Welcome to our morning meeting with ambassadors. We're here with Leo, our long-eared owl, this morning. Leo has been with us since 2007. He is actually one of our older ambassadors. He's a little crotchety this morning. He is a little bit perturbed to be woken up. This is when he would normally be sleeping, but he'll settle down once we settle into our talk. Please let us know if you're here, where you're from. If you have any questions in the comments down below, we would love to hear from you. And as always, there is a donate button right on the side where you guys can donate, and we greatly appreciate it. It helps to support the care of Leo here, of all of our patients. We have just entered baby season. We're treating our first baby mammals and baby birds, so any donations that you can give are greatly appreciated. Leo here came to us after he was in a pretty common incident. He came to us after he was hit by a car. This happens to a lot of our raptor patients here at the center. Leo is a raptor, which means he's a bird of prey. So he's an owl, and they are going to be hunting for their food and catching their food themselves and then killing it themselves. These guys really do like to eat a lot of small mammals as well as birds. They do like to eat some songbirds. And when they're hunting and they're young, sometimes if they are having a hard time getting through the winter, or if they're having a hard time finding food on their own, they will go to really advantageous places for them. They'll go to the roads. They'll go any place where they can find an easy source of food. And very often, what are you doing? Why are you lying down? Very often that is the roads. When we throw apple cores or banana peels or anything like that onto the side of the road, that can attract small mammals, prey animals like mice and squirrels and things, and then that can attract the predators of those animals like Leo here. So very frequently we will get raptors coming into us that have been hit by cars because they were hunting someplace for an easy meal, and unfortunately got hit while they were doing that. There's an additional issue with owls where they will be hunting primarily at night, and it's hard for people to see them before they swoop right down in front of their cars, in front of their headlights, because it's so dark out. So driving carefully, keeping an eye out for, especially this time of year, squirrels, turtles, owls, all sorts of animals that might be moving around. Crossing roads is a really great way to help our wildlife stay safe, on top of not throwing trash out of our car windows. So let us know if you're here. Leave a comment or say hello, and we'll be checking in with you guys. And then, of course, if you have any questions, please let me know.
Ryan Ivy is watching.
Good morning, Ryan. We miss you. It's been so great to connect with all of our volunteers this way.
Christopher Bell says hello from New Jersey.
Wow. Hello.
Joe, age 8, is watching from Londonderry.
Hi, Joe. Good morning.
And Braden, age 6, is from Bedford, New Hampshire.
Hi, Braden. It's good to see you. Thank you guys so much for checking in. That's great to know who's watching. That's awesome.
And Caroline and Nana in Kittery are watching.
Good morning. Yeah, so the Center for Wildlife is normally open 365 days a year. We're still open for animal admissions, but not for tours. And so when you are able to visit us again, we would greatly encourage that. All of our ambassador animals live in outdoor enclosures outside. They have beautiful outdoor spaces that look like their native habitats, and Leo is often one that we see visitors playing Find the Owl with. He does usually sit in a visible spot, but sometimes he's so well camouflaged it's really tricky to see him. Leo has beautiful markings all over him to help him to blend in with the bark of trees. These guys would normally be found in pretty dense forests, not really that well adjusted to living near people. So usually they're going to be in a dense forested area. They really like any place with conifers, with lots of tall trees, like spruce, firs, and pines. They do migrate somewhat down south for the winter, but for most of the year they spend their time up in pretty far northern areas. So think up in Canada, up in the northern United States, And then they are also found throughout the world. So they're found along kind of that band of area around the world that's just below the Arctic tundra. So they're found in northern Russia and China and Europe. They're found in Germany and all sorts of areas in northern Europe. So they are actually a worldwide species. Any place along that northern band of forest, they are pretty successful. They're similar in that way to the distribution of like a snowy owl. They'll come down from the top of the world and spread out that way. So these guys are pretty common throughout the world. They are a species that we call a species of least concern, which means that they're not endangered or threatened in any way. But they are pretty rare to spot. They are very, very shy, and usually are not seen unless you're really an avid hiker or doing a lot of activity in the woods. You usually don't get to see these guys. But when you do see one, it's really likely that you'll see up to 30 of them at once, because these guys do something pretty unique. They will all live together in what's called a communal roost for at least part of the year, especially in the winter. They'll huddle together for warmth. They'll help each other stay fed. And that's really unique in the owl world. Most owls will, have a mate for the period of year where they're breeding and raising young, and then they'll separate out and be on their own unless they're doing that breeding activity. So these guys spending time with other members of their species when they're not breeding, when they're just trying to get through the winter, is actually really, really unique. And they've figured out a way to make themselves more successful by doing that, which is really cool. They do migrate, so like I said, they'll live up in pretty far northern areas up into Canada, up really close to the Arctic, to the North Pole, pretty much as far as that tree line goes until you get to the Arctic tundra. But then some of the northernmost part of their range gets too cold for them in the winter, so you will see those northernmost ones migrate down south. And they might go as far south as, the mid-Atlantic coast, Maryland, Virginia, New Jersey, that area. So they will migrate down to that area, but then there are some that also stay where they are. There are some that live, for example, in places like Maine, where they would be okay just throughout most of the winter, especially in coastal areas where it's a little bit more temperate. Do we have any questions so far?
So a couple people might be having trouble seeing him a bit.
You can get a little closer.
Hi, buddy.
Hi!
I think he blends in pretty well to the pond there.
He does blend in really well. Is it hard to see you because you're so good at hiding?
And someone was wondering, did we mention how old Leo is?
So he's actually somewhere around 13 years old. Probably older than that. He was an adult when he came in. So it's hard to tell with owls how old they are if they're an adult when they come in. Sometimes you can tell based on their feathers, based on how recently they've molted or grown in new feathers. Sometimes you can tell. But with Leo, we're pretty sure he was an adult bird, so older than one. But beyond that, it's hard to tell. So Leo came to us in 2007, and he's been with us that whole time. So he's somewhere around 13 years old, 14 years old, which is actually really old. Not really old. It's up there for this species. Usually they're only found in the wild living up to about 11. So he is a senior owl friend, and he is very much a shy ambassador. He likes to be in his enclosure. We don't really take him on any programs that would be loud or crazy or anything like that. We'll usually have him on site or going to quieter places. But he is a really good ambassador for species that don't necessarily like people so much and are best observed from a distance. A lot of our ambassadors at the center here are very social, love people, will come right to the front of their enclosure. And Leo is not like that. He will sit in a corner of his enclosure. He's still visible to the public. You have to look for him because he blends in so well. But he is very beautiful and is great to just observe. And that's how you would see them in the wild. And that is how most of our wild wild animals are. He's comfortable with his handlers. It just takes a little bit longer to get him used to people, but he is very, very sweet. You can see actually this wing over here doesn't sit quite as well as the one on this side. So his right wing is the one that is broken, and it unfortunately doesn't have a full range of motion anymore. He's not able to lift it up fully. So Leo actually has a hard time getting lift up off the ground. He's not able to get up off the ground. He can do a little bit of like controlled falling around his enclosure, but he has lots of things like perching and ramps to help him get up high, which is where he would prefer to be. He really loves sitting next to the trees that he has in his enclosure, and it's actually really hard to see him sometimes when he's sitting right up against the tree bark in his enclosure. His beautiful camouflage is really, really well adapted to blend in very nicely with tree bark. So sometimes we get a little scared when we go in and we can't see Leo in there. It's because he's hiding so well. We've had a few spooks. Long-eared owls are called long-eared owls for these little feather tufts that you see on top of his head. There are long-eared owls and short-eared owls, and it just, the short-ears have tiny short ears. And neither of them actually have ears on the tops of their head like that. Those are not ears. Those are just feathers. You can kind of see from the side a little bit if you go along you're going to turn your head. You can see that they're just feathers. His ears are actually located on the side of his head closer to his eye. And, they named them long-eared owls just because they kind of look like cat ears or dog ears or something like that. But they're actually important for his camouflage. So you can see Leo is really tall for an owl of his size. He's very tall and skinny. And those little feather tufts help to make him look even taller and skinnier. So when he's sitting up against a tree, and he makes himself super tall and skinny if he hears maybe a predator or something, he will stick those feather tufts straight up in the air and try to blend in even more with the vertical line of that tree. And it's really, really hard to spot them. They're also really quiet, so they're not going to necessarily give away their position very easily. And so his ears are not on the top of his head. That's a misnomer. They really aren't ears. They also are sometimes referred to as horns in other species, like our great horned owls. They're not horns either. They're just feathers, and they're really important for camouflage. There are lots of owls that have these feather tufts. We call them tufted owls or eared owls, horned owls, things like that, but they're all just feathers. And his ears are actually located on the side of his head, right behind his eye, very close and behind this circle of feathers that you see here. Leo doesn't like to be touched, so we're not going to be able to show you his ears, but kind of right in this area, he's going to have his ear right underneath those brown tawny feathers. And their ears are actually pretty large. They're shaped similar to ours. They have this shell shape to them. And the reason that they sit right behind that tawny ring of feathers is because that actually acts kind of like a little satellite dish for their hearing. So when Leo hears something from down below and he's, scanning for prey, he's listening for prey, he will be able to turn his head down in the direction that he hears his food. And they actually are able to do little tiny micro adjustments of their feathers and kind of tune into that sound. And it's kind of like when we cup our ears to hear better, it helps to pick up on more of those sound waves and make things really loud for Leo. So he's able to pinpoint exactly where that prey is on the ground and go down and pounce on it. And they actually have very directional hearing as well. So we have a hard time sometimes figuring out where a sound is coming from. We kind of turn our heads. We have to figure it out for a second. There are ventriloquists who can throw their voices across the room and trick our brains into thinking that their voices are coming from someplace they're not. But owls are really, really good at figuring out exactly where sound is coming from really quickly. And the way that they do this is by having ears that are actually offset from each other. So our ears are in a straight line across our face on most of us, and they are in a straight line, and we can hear pretty well things that are in front of us and things that are behind us, things that are coming from the left, things that are coming from the right, but we can't really hear that well things that are coming from above us or below us, and we can't figure out, you know, that sort of plane very easily. And for an owl that lives in a tree, he needs to have that information. He needs to know whether a sound is coming from above him or below him, because he has things that live above him and things that live below him too. So he has offset ears that are actually tilted a little bit, and one is up high, kind of near where the tip of our ear is, and then one is down low, kind of near where our earlobe would be. And what that does is it allows him to figure out where sound is coming from really easily. So if he hears something coming from up high, he's going to turn his head and look up in that direction. And he knows it's coming from up on this side of his head because his ear over here picked up on it before this ear down here did. And if he hears something coming from down below, he knows to turn his head and look down in the direction of that sound. Do we have some questions?
Yeah, we are wondering what Leo's favorite foods are.
So Leo in the wild would eat a lot of small mammals and some birds. They actually are known to eat a lot of songbirds. There was a case study of a long-eared owl that was found that had passed away, and upon doing a necropsy on him, they found 30 cardinal beaks in his stomach. And so cardinal beaks are really, really tough and don't break down easily, and owls have pretty weak stomach acid, so they weren't being broken down. But they do eat a lot of birds because they are, you know, very, very easily snatched up. They do a lot of nest raiding too. So they do like to eat birds and small mammals. They are very well adapted to eating a lot of the different songbirds that live in very dense conifer spruce fir forests. So a lot of the songbirds that nest up in Canada, these guys love to eat. In captivity, we feed him a base diet of mice. Leo's actually a little picky about the color of his mice. He needs to get brown mice. Usually when we get mice, they're from a lab. They're white. They're the albino mice, like lab mice that we have donated to us from Jackson Laboratories. Very, very sweet of them. And he actually will not eat the white mice. If you think about that, in nature, there are very few white mice running around out there. They might have white bellies, but camouflage is really important for a prey animal like that, and a white mouse would get picked up really, really easily by a predator. So there are not a lot of albino mice out there in the wild. And Leo, having been from the wild and who grew up in the wild, doesn't recognize a white mouse as being food. So he won't eat them. He really only eats the brown mice that look like they're really mice. He also does like some birds, so we give our falcons, who are mostly bird eaters, we give them quail and chicks on certain days of the week, and we do give Leo chicks as well, and he does seem to like those, because that would be a pretty normal part of his diet in the wild. He's laying down on my glove. I don't know if you guys can tell, but he has gone from standing up to laying down. This just means he's, comfortable, but he's really funny. Once he settles down, he actually gets very, very calm. And yeah, a lot of our owls will do this if we wake them up and they're sleepy. They'll just kind of fall over and sleep, like resting their chest on the glove. It's really cute. Sometimes we go to get them out of their travel boxes when we arrive at a program at a school, and they'll be like asleep, because it is normally the time of day when they would be snoozing, resting. They're active all night long, so it'd be kind of like if you got up at 2 a.m. and someone asked you to go do something, you might doze off. So that, he's relaxing. He's just kind of sleeping and hunkering down. You're such a good boy, Leo. Leo has a really cool adaptation that is particularly apparent on him because he has really, really long feathers on his wings. And this is to do with the way that they maneuver through trees in the forest. The ratio of the length of his wings to the length of his tail helps him to maneuver in the woods. And Leo has a really amazing edge to some of these feathers. I know. He's like, nope, don't touch me. It's okay. I was sleeping and you woke me up. It's okay. Good boy. I know. So you might be able to see it here, but I also have a model if you're not able to. It's okay, buddy. You're okay. Nice job. We can look at the model instead. So our owl species have amazing feathers that are really well adapted to blend in or to make very little noise, to be totally silent when they fly. They are also really great at staying very warm. Like I mentioned, Leo is a species of owl that would live in really northern latitudes. So they are very, very high up north, and it gets quite cold up there for many of these guys that don't migrate, and so they have a lot of fluffy feathers that cover their bodies to keep them warm. So their feathers are very soft and downy. I know he looks like he's very soft, and he really is. The other reason they have very soft feathers and very quiet feathers is because they are going to try to sneak up on their prey whenever they can. If you think about noises that you might hear out in the woods, during the day you're going to be hearing a lot of birds calling, you're going to be hearing a lot of wind rustling through the trees. There's a lot of noise out there in the woods during the day, but then at night all of those noises kind of go away. So our birds, our songbirds, for the most part, go to sleep. For the evening, the wind dies down, there's not as much noise out there in the woods, and our owls who are hunting don't want to make a bunch of noise and disturb their prey, who then might run off and they might not be able to catch them. So they're trying to sneak up on their prey like a cat, and sometimes long-eared owls are called cat owls, actually. And the way that they're able to do this, the way that they're able to fly so silently and sneak up on their food, is by having these really, really tiny, fine little hairs or bits to their feathers on the edges of all of their feathers that cut up the wind that they make with their feathers. So if you look really carefully at this wing here, you can see on the edge here, next to like my finger, it starts to look like the teeth of a comb, especially on this leading edge. That's what we call the top of their wing, of their feathers. That is to help them cut up on the sound that they make when they flap their wings. So if you think about, a plane, when you're on a plane and the captain comes on the line and he says we're going to experience some turbulence. That turbulence can create some noise, and the same turbulence might create noise if it's created by this wing. So those little feathers, those little comb teeth, help to cut up the turbulence that's created by this wing. So when he flaps his wings, he's actually very, very silent when he does that. And having silent flight, it's okay, is something that we actually test our owls for. If we can hear our owls flapping, that might be a good sign that they might have a hard time surviving in the wild, and they might need to do a little bit more physical therapy, build up some strength a little bit more, or that they might not be releasable after all. We have a tiny little owl named Artemis who actually doesn't have silent flight anymore, and that's why she lives with us. So Leo here has a beautiful edge to his feathers down here, and that is really, really important for helping him to fly silently. He has a long portion of his wing that has all of those comb teeth on them. And then they're also very, very, very soft, and that helps to absorb sound, kind of like the sponge on a microphone. So lots of amazing adaptations that he has. Do we have any questions?
How much does Leo weigh?
Leo, actually, I just weighed him. He weighs 250 grams, which is about a half a pound. So maybe a little bit more than that, but not very much at all. And birds in general tend to be very, very light. That's what helps them to get up off the ground. In order to stay up in the air, they need to be light enough that gravity isn't going to pull them down too much. They also have little tiny sacs throughout their body that fill up with air and help them to stay buoyant and stay up in the air. I know I'm gesticulating so much. I know, I'm sorry. And that will help them to stay up as well. But their bones are actually hollow. That allows them to be a little bit lighter. Most of the bones in their body, the long bones like in their legs and in their wings, are hollow. And they're actually incredibly light and delicate, even where there is full bone. So they actually are very, very... I know, we're almost done, buddy. He's getting up done with me. They are very, very light. He also is very fluffy. He doesn't look like he would weigh much to begin with, but he's even smaller than he really looks because he's covered in a lot of fluff. So most of what you see is actually fluffiness, and then his body doesn't start for another like half an inch underneath all those feathers. So he's pretty tiny under there. And all of those feathers are obviously very light. I know. Yeah, so you're feisty. Yes, you are.
What is the largest owl?
So the largest owl in the world is called the Eurasian eagle owl. It's very, very big. It's even larger than a snowy owl, or the largest owl that we have around here year-round is the great horned owl, who would be probably around like 5 to 6 times the size of Leo here. So very big. We have a great horned owl named Gaia who sits about this tall on my glove. And a Eurasian eagle owl would be even bigger than that, so maybe like that big. And they have, very impressive wingspans, like 5-6 feet. They're very, very large, but they're only really found in Europe and Asia, which is where they get the name Eurasian eagle owl. And they're called eagle owls because of their size, because they are so large. And our great horned owls are called great because they're so large. I know. We're so upset. Yeah. He's very grouchy.
Deirdre says, hang in there, Leo.
I know, we're almost done. Good boy. Hi, everybody. Yeah, please let me know if you have any questions. I'm happy to answer them. Leo's fascinating, so.
Brendan says, who is his favorite helper?
I don't know if he has a favorite. We all kind of annoy him to some degree. He would prefer that we didn't handle him. Whoever has food probably is his favorite at the time. He's been working with some of our staff though for his entire career here, so probably the people he's known the longest, like our executive director Kristen Lamb probably. But yeah, whoever has food and annoys him the least is probably his favorite. Yeah. Not me right now. Not me. He says I want to go back to bed.
June would like to know if Leo would eat a bat.
Yeah, definitely. So, owls will eat bats. It depends on if their, habitats are overlapping, but definitely. And usually bats are very fast and, a lot of trouble for owls. Owls tend to be a little bit, more of a lazy hunter. They'll, perch and then pounce on things that they see, but if they come across a bat, definitely that owls are one of the primary predators of bats, actually. Yep. Maybe not a larger species that would need more calories than a bat could provide, but yeah. Would you eat a bat? It says it's a flying mouse. It's not a flying mouse. It's just
Linda says this was very informative.
Oh, thank you. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We really appreciate staying connected with you guys. We miss presenting for all of our community members very much.
Priscilla Dowd gave us a donation.
Thank you so much, Priscilla. That's so generous and sweet. We do have that donation button, everybody, so thank you ahead of time for donating. That's awesome.
As did Jennifer Gaylord.
Thank you so much. Thank you, guys. Good boy, Leo. Says, can I eat all these birds that we're hearing? We've had our Phoebes return to our area lately, and they've been making a racket along with our frogs. So there's many, many birds and frogs talking around here right now.
Is Leo an average size for his species, or do they get bigger than this?
The females of the species might get a little bit bigger, not significantly, but yes, they might get a little larger if they were a female. Usually with owls, the females are sitting on the nest defending young. They want to be big and tough and beefy and mean. And then the males are off hunting and doing a lot of flying, want to be light and agile and quick, so they're a little bit smaller. And sometimes that's a really drastic difference, like in our larger species, like gray horned owls or barred owls, you can see a pretty drastic difference in size between the two, but in these smaller species, it tends to be very, very slight, so females might be a little bit bigger. It tends to be more like in weight, though. It tends to be more heavy. They just carry more muscle on them.
Janet says, thank you for helping him.
Thank you, guys. He's wonderful. He's been with us for longer than I've been here. He's a wonderful ambassador. He's really great. And, yeah, he's one of our most senior ambassadors. He gets special treatment. Yeah, you're a good boy. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Please leave any questions down below, and we'll be happy to answer them for you if we didn't get to the answers here. And tune in again tomorrow. We'll be doing another one of these morning meetings tomorrow, and every day throughout the month of April. As always, thank you so much for donating and staying connected with us. We really appreciate it, and we'll see you later. Thanks, guys.